Imagine building a $2 million fitness empire by the age of 30, and then hurling yourself through a second-story window so hard you shatter your spine and almost lose your life. This is the story of Calum von Moger, the man the internet once called Arnold 2.0, the golden boy of bodybuilding who had everything until it all spiraled into drugs, arrests, and a jump that left his entire empire in pieces. And the craziest part? The warning signs were there for years, hiding in plain sight behind the perfect physique and motivational captions. Calum's story doesn't start on a flashy Venice Beach boardwalk or a glamorous fitness expo stage. It begins on a small farm in Victoria, Australia. Picture a skinny kid, one of several siblings, running around in the countryside, miles away from the bright lights of Hollywood. He discovered weights at 14, sneaking into a dusty local gym after hours with his older brother. No fancy machines, no brand deals, no cameras, just old iron, creaky benches, and a teenager obsessed with the idea of building something out of himself. In that tiny gym, he found two things: the rush of lifting and the escape it gave him. Every rep added a little more muscle, but also a little more identity. Calum wasn't just some farm kid anymore. He was the guy who lifts. And very quickly it became clear he wasn't just good. He was elite. By his early 20s, Calum had exploded onto the bodybuilding scene. He wasn't just winning local shows. He was taking home junior Mr. Universe titles and then stepping into the big leagues, winning the overall Mr. Universe. Judges loved him, fans loved him. Commentators compared his classic lines and proportions to a young Arnold Schwarzenegger. That comparison, Arnold 2.0, stuck like glue. And with that nickname came a new level of fame. Photo shoots, sponsorships, interviews. It was like watching a character from an old-school bodybuilding poster step into real life. On social media, his following rocketed into the millions. Every back double biceps, every chest pose, every gym selfie pulled in hundreds of thousands of likes. Fitness brands noticed, supplement companies noticed, the movie industry noticed. Soon, Calum wasn't just competing, he was capitalizing. This is where the $2 million empire really started to take shape. He signed sponsorships, landed magazine covers, and co-founded or became the face of supplement lines that used his image as their main marketing weapon. He started selling merch and clothing, turning his initials and name into a recognizable fitness brand. With appearances, online coaching, YouTube revenue, and brand deals layered on top, Calum wasn't just a bodybuilder, he was a business. Then came Hollywood. When the biopic Bigger was made about Joe and Ben Whiter, the men who helped create modern bodybuilding, they needed someone to play young Arnold. Think about that for a second. Of all the bodybuilders in the world, they picked Calum. He stepped into the role that basically confirmed what the internet was already saying. He was the modern-day echo of Schwarzenegger. As his acting roles and appearances grew, his social media turned into a highlight reel of everything most gym rats dream about. Training in legendary gyms, networking with top influencers, traveling and living a life built around the sport he loved. Financially, things looked incredible. Between sponsorships, product lines, brand deals, and his own ventures, like his supplement company and apparel, Calum's net worth climbed into the seven figures. But this is where something important happened. On the outside, it looked like he was unstoppable. On the inside, cracks were already forming. The first big public warning sign showed up in 2017. A video hit the internet of Calum training with another bodybuilder, attempting a heavy barbell curl together. Mid-rep, his bicep tore. You can almost feel the tendons snap just watching it. That injury, followed later by a serious knee injury while rock climbing, didn't just sideline his training. It shook his identity. When your entire life is built on your body, an injury is not just physical, it's psychological. Suddenly, the guy whose body looked invincible realized he actually wasn't. Rehab meant less training, fewer PR videos, less content. He still had sponsorships and fame, but the lifestyle that had built his empire was no longer as simple as eat, lift, repeat. Now it was surgeries, recovery, and a lot more time with his thoughts. That extra space is where a lot of athletes start to struggle. The world still expects greatness, but your body is saying, not yet. Your income, reputation, and sense of self are tied to always being at 100%. And when you're not, it's easy to start looking for other ways to feel good. As Calum worked through injuries and attempted comebacks, he also tried to level up his business moves. He built his supplement line, grew his merch, and leaned hard into social media. At his peak, his hustle, physique, and digital presence made that $2 million valuation not just believable, but conservative. He had what most gym kids on the planet fantasize about: money, fame, influence, and a body that looked superhuman. But behind the scenes, a darker pattern was forming, one that had nothing to do with macros or training splits. Stories began to circulate about drug use, instability, and erratic behavior. For a while, they were just rumors in comment sections and forums. Then they became headlines. His move back to Australia in an attempt to open a gym looked at first like a grounded next chapter. A hometown hero coming back to build something on his own turf. A physical space for his brand, leverage of his name, an anchor for his business outside of Instagram. But the gym closed not long after it opened. From the outside, it felt like a symbol of the bigger truth. The empire might have been big, but its foundation was starting to crack. Then came the legal problems. Police caught him with drugs, including methamphetamine, cannabis, and testosterone. Suddenly, the guy whose name once stood for discipline and self-control was standing in a courtroom, pleading guilty and getting fined, pushed toward rehabilitation. That kind of public fall doesn't just hurt your image. It terrifies sponsors, scares off partners, and burns bridges in an industry obsessed with inspiration. But all of that, the injuries, the gym closure, the drug charges, was still just the buildup. The real breaking point came in May 2022. It was reported that Calum jumped from a second-story window of a house in Australia. Not just climbed down, not just slipped. He went through the glass. Lacerations tore across his body. His spine took the main impact. Surgeons had to operate. He ended up in an induced coma in the ICU. For a while, nobody knew if he would even walk again, let alone train. Think about the level of chaos and pain it takes to get to the point where a second-story window starts to look like an exit. There were reports he was under the influence of drugs. There were whispers of mental health struggles, of suicidal thoughts, of a man who seemed to be doing everything he could to escape his own life, even if it meant destroying his body, the very thing his entire existence was built around. In the hospital with rods in his back and scars across his body, that perfect Arnold 2.0 image died. The internet that once worshipped him started asking a different question. What happened to Calum von Moger? Clips of his injuries, breakdowns, and mugshots spread. Fitness channels and commentators made videos dissecting his downfall, like it was some tragic documentary in real time. And this is where that $2 million empire really shows its fragility. When your worth is built on being an untouchable icon, there's not a lot of room for you to be human. Sponsors don't want rehab. Brands don't want headlines about meth. Business partners don't want someone trending for the wrong reasons. Slowly but surely, doors started closing. Some revenue streams dried up, trust evaporated. His supplement company shut down. The gym closed. The shiny brand he had built over years of lifting faded into a reputation for drama and self-destruction. Money that once flowed in from deals, appearances, product drops, now had to compete with legal fees, medical bills, rehab costs, and the ripple effects of a ruined public image. An empire built on a perfect aesthetic collapsed under very human problems: addiction, anxiety, depression, identity crisis. The bodybuilding world is full of talk about strength, but almost none of it prepares you for being mentally fragile when the spotlight turns harsh. Calum himself has since spoken in interviews and conversations about just how dark things got. He has described battling suicidal thoughts, dealing with pressure, and trying to come back from a place where he almost ended everything. When he talks about shattering his vertebrae, you can hear that the real break wasn't just in his spine, it was in his sense of who he was. And yet, here's where the story gets complicated. Because even after everything, the jump, the coma, the court case, the memes, the fall from grace, Calum von Moger is still here, still talking, still training, still, in some ways, trying to rebuild. But rebuild what exactly? That's the key question. Does he rebuild the same kind of empire? The one built on a flawless image, maxed out aesthetics, and a social media persona that never shows weakness? Or does he accept that the world has already seen the real damage and build something more raw and honest? Because here's the truth. The version of Calum that jumped through that window can't come back and pretend to be the same Arnold 2.0 he was before. The internet never forgets. For people watching from the outside, his story is more than just fitness drama. It's a blueprint of how quickly success can turn into a weapon against you. You grind for years to build your body, your name, your wealth. And then, if you haven't built your mind with the same intensity, the pressure can crush you. It shows what happens when your body is strong but your mental health is neglected. Your bank account grows, but your support system shrinks. Your identity is tied 100% to staying on top, with no space to be broken, lost, or confused. Remember, this was a guy who had millions of followers, magazine covers, film roles, and a brand valued in the millions. And yet, alone in a room with his demons, all of that wasn't enough to keep him from going through a second-story window. The empire was real. So was the pain. The question now is whether his next chapter will be about chasing the old image, or finally letting it die so he can become something stronger than Arnold 2.0. Because if this story proves anything, it's that the real test isn't how much you can lift, how much you can earn, or how famous you can get. It's what's left of you when the money, the muscles, and the followers are gone, and you're staring at the broken glass, trying to decide if your life is over, or just brutally, painfully beginning again.